What's up, friendly ghosts from the future? How you guys doing? All right, so I was talking with your pastor this past week, and I got some names of your leaders there in America in the year. What was the year again for you guys? 2020, that's right, it changed for you guys. Yeah. So I got the name of some of your leaders to use for an illustration from your pastor. You know, your pastor's a really nice guy. He washed my clothes for me. I like his haircut too. I like that guy. So I got an illustration for you. What I want you to do is close your eyes and imagine with me. I'm going to do some stage setting for the story tonight, all right? Close your eyes. I'm watching you. Like, if you don't close your eyes, I can see it. I'm literally right here. Okay. All right. So what if you guys were having a prayer meeting together as a church, and all of a sudden God spoke in the middle of the prayer meeting, like you heard his voice. Everybody in the prayer meeting heard his voice. And he said this. He said, "Send Robinson and Powell on a missionary trip for me." All right, you can open up your eyes. What if that really happened? Like, guys, that's what happened in our little church family prayer meeting in Antioch. We were praying. God said, send Paul and Barnabas on this missionary trip. So we sent them. But guys, we didn't know these two guys were going to be gone for 2 years. You realize this trip took them 2 years? So my question for you is, if Robinson and Powell left for 2 years, would you forget about them? Some of you are related to them. You're like, nah, no. But yeah, maybe some of you would. Like, that's a long time to go. Well, all right, last week was part one of their trip. They visited a couple regions. Today, 3 more cities to go. They've been gone at this part in the trip, halfway through the trip. They've been gone from home for like 9 months or so. There's already been a lot of bruises, but there's also been a lot of blessings. And bruises, as I've been stressing, bruises always come with blessings. That's the good thing about it. So, all right, more cities, and then they'll start the long trip home. You guys ready to go? All right, let's dive in. This is Christianity's first official missionary trip, part 2. All right, the year is 48 AD. I'm going to make this chapter 14 in my account. All right, they're going to hit up 3 cities, and then they're going to turn back. So 3 adventures. Here we go. City number 1, Iconium. At Iconium, Paul and Barnabas, what's their first task? They're in a new city where people have never heard about Jesus. What's the first task they're going to do? Would you guess? Evangelism, yep. And knowing Paul, where's he going to go to do evangelism? Where does Paul usually start when he goes to a city? He's going to go to the synagogue. He always starts with the Jews first. I don't know why. He felt like they need to get a chance first. So Paul and Barnabas, they find the Jewish synagogue in this city of Iconium. There's synagogues in every major city in the empire because there's Jews all over. Okay, so they go into the synagogue and they get an open door to speak the gospel, right? So I don't have to tell you Paul's sermon because he preaches the same sermon everywhere to Jews. I shared it with you guys last week. He tries to prove to them that the scroll said the chosen one would rise from the dead. A man showed up and literally rose from the dead like 15 years ago down there in Jerusalem. He rose from the dead. He is the chosen one. Believe. He's the king. Okay, it's a simple sermon. So he preached, and a huge number of Jews and Gentiles in this city believed. So it's awesome. But the Jews that didn't believe, because there's always some that don't believe, they stirred up the Gentiles and kind of poisoned their mind against Paul and Barnabas. They were like, guys, okay, wait. Before you go believe in this Christianity thing, like, okay, trust us. We've been in this city longer than these foreigners. We know the scrolls. The stuff he's saying isn't right. Don't believe it. Don't be so gullible. And kind of poisoned their mind against Paul and Barnabas. So Paul and Barnabas ended up spending a lot of time there. I got to write this down for Theophilus. Speaking boldly. And God was doing miracles and confirming the message about his grace with signs and wonders. So the long and the short of it is, Iconium, city number 1, God. Half of them believed, half of them didn't. And the ones that didn't believe started planning, we got to get rid of these 2 foreigners. Like, they've been here long enough, we got to get them out of our city. And one of them had the idea, why don't we just kill them? That'll get rid of them for good. So there was a little plan how they could stone Paul and Barnabas. And so it's kind of business as usual for Paul and Barnabas. When they found out that these guys were planning on stoning them, what do you think they did? Yeah, they're like, we out of here. We don't have to stay. So they went to the next city on their list. And you know, Jesus had said that. When Jesus was still alive, he said, hey, if they persecute you in one city, you don't have to just stay there and take it. Go to the next city. There's plenty of cities to preach, right? So, all right, A summary from city number one, breaking down city number one. Was it a great experience, yay, or a bad experience? Was it bruises or blessings? Or some of both? Yeah, some of both. And you're going to find that's kind of the pattern. Wherever we go, there's bruises. Okay, in this city, the bruises were half of them didn't believe. They started arguing against us, lying about us, and then they tried to kill us. Okay, bruises. No bueno. But there was also blessings. A bunch of people there did believe and got saved. In fact, Paul is going to write a letter to the people in this area just about a year later, because these believers in Iconium the name of the region is Galatia. Have you ever guys heard about a place called Galatia? And so about a year from now, there's enough believers there that Paul's actually going to write them a little letter called Galatians. It's going to be one of the first letters that makes it into the New Testament canon. Right now, there's only one other letter in the canon, James, 48 AD. That's all we got. So now Galatians is going to be the second. So, all right, mixed review. So if you ever want to read that letter and find out more, he's going to write to those guys and warn them against those Jewish people who are teaching them some bad stuff, kind of poisoning them. All right, on to city number 2. We got 3 cities today, and that's it. City number 2 is Lystra. So yeah, in Lystra, there was a man who was crippled in his feet. He was lame from birth, and he never walked, okay? Crippled his whole life. He listened to Paul as he was speaking, and Paul looked directly at this guy, and Paul could see, this guy's got faith to be healed. Now, raise your hand if you've got the gift of working miracles. Anybody in this room? My spiritual gifts are different than that, all right? I don't have that gift. Do any of you guys? Okay, I don't know what it's like to have that gift, but apparently if you have that gift, you have the ability to, tell when you're able to work a miracle. I don't think you can just do it all the time. And Paul had the ability to see which people he could do it for, and it's very interesting. So he saw this crippled guy's got the faith for it. So he goes over to the crippled guy and calls out to him and says, stand up on your feet. And at that, the man, he jumps up, begins walking around. Now, the crowd there in Lystra, they saw... You guys are weird, man. I don't know what's going on. What are you even saying? All right. When the crowd saw that this guy could walk, all of a sudden they shouted out in their language, because they spoke a different language, right, than Paul. The gods have come down to us in human form. They thought Paul and Barnabas were gods. And so they actually gave a nickname. Barnabas, they figured was Zeus. Okay, Zeus was like the head Greek god. And Paul, they called him Hermes. Hermes is the Greek god, kind of the great god of mischief. My family used to serve these gods, so I know all about him. Hermes is kind of the god of mischief. He's kind of a troublemaker, but he's also really good at speaking and language. And Paul was their main speaker, so they're like, all right, you're Hermes and you're Zeus. And the priest of Zeus was right outside the city. He had his temple, and he actually gets bulls. They're serious. These Lycaonians, they think Paul and Barnabas are the gods come down in human form because they've got this power. They're all about them. They're like, we're going to follow these guys till our death. And the priest gets some bulls, and he brings them into the city gates. He's bringing them to the city. He's got wreaths with them. They're going to put wreaths on these guys and sacrifice animals to them. Okay? Now, Paul and Barnabas couldn't understand their language, right? And they're speaking in their own tongue at this point. And but they figured out, when Paul and Barnabas figured out, oh my goodness, these guys are going to sacrifice to us as if we're gods. They ripped their clothes, which was a sign of deep grief. And they're like, guys, no, what are you doing? They ran into the crowd and they're like, we're just humans, just like you. In fact, we're trying to bring you a message, a good message telling you need to turn away from these kind of practices and following all these weird gods. There's only one God, the living God. You don't have to carve him and make statues for him. He's alive. Okay, and he's the one that made heaven, earth, the sea, and everything in it. It's not like there's one God that made the sea, Poseidon, one God in the sky, Zeus, and one God over here, and one God for the animal. Only one God made them all. And we're trying to tell you about him. And and they tell him, and they went and told him, in the past, God let you believe this stuff. He let all the nations go their own way. But now he's calling everybody back to him. But even while he was letting you go, he gave you good gifts. He gave you rain. He gave you crops. He gave you things to fill your life and your hearts with joy. And so they kind of convinced them, and they didn't make the sacrifice. They're like, all right. But it was hard. They really wanted to make sacrifices to Paul and Barnabas. So, things are going great in the city of Lystra, right? All right. What is going on? The lights are flickering off and off of me. So things are going great in Lystra, but then, all right, you guys got it. I don't know, but this is getting really distracting. I mean, I'm having a hard time focusing. All right, so everything's going great in this city. And but then some of the people from the earlier cities, from Iconium and even back from Antioch, some of the haters from those cities, they found out Paul and Barnabas were in this city that starts with an L, and they walked down there, and they started poisoning these guys. They're like, hey, these foreigners, hey, we just kicked them out of our city. Don't listen to anything they say. We've even got some Jews here that said they're making this stuff up, that are of their same race. And so just don't follow these guys. So instantly, boom, guess what happened to the people of Lystra? I don't know what that even means. But guess what happened to the people? They instantly rebelled against them. Like, they were going to worship them as gods. Now they're like, we're going to kill them. And so they actually stormed around Paul. They took rocks, and they actually stoned Paul. Like, you guys know what happens when you get stoned, right? Stephen, I explained. You know what happens to your bones when you get stoned? These aren't little rocks they use. These are big rocks to kill. It's an execution. It breaks your bones. It rips your skin up, puts cuts all over your body, fractures, broken ribs, broken legs, everything. They smashed Paul to death with their stones. They stoned him, and then they dragged what they thought was his dead body out of the city and said, "See ya, foreigner." And they went back in the city. But some of the people in that city that had believed gathered around Paul, and when they gathered around him, it's kind of a mystery, but he got up. And he went back into the city. Now, everybody has an opinion on this. I'm just going to write the facts. This is what happened. They stoned him. They thought he was dead. The believers gathered around him. He got up and walked back into the city. Some people think he literally died and God rose him from the dead. Other people just think, he wasn't that dead. He was just like somewhat injured and pretending to be dead. I've got my opinion, but I'll let you make your decisions. But yeah, and Paul goes right back into the city. All right, so that's it for city number 2. So let's recap. Things in Lystra, good or bad? Bruises or blessings? Definitely bruises. A lot of bruises, right? But yeah, the main thing to know about this city, the main lesson is something is going on with the lightning gods or these candles in the sky. I don't know, but it's distracting. The lesson from this city, and this is an important lesson, crowds are fickle, okay? The people in your school, the crowds in your school are fickle. The people you're going to work with someday are fickle. Your friends, they may seem like they're all on your side, they're fickle. Human beings are fickle. They can change their opinion like this. They can go from being hot and cold. I talked to your pastor and found out, I was like, what are some of the famous sports in the future? Apparently you don't have chariot races anymore, like boring. But you guys have other sports. He told me about one called ballot ball or something. You throw it and it's like a hoop. It's like a circle and it's like on a stick and they jump and Well, he was telling me about this. All right. So I was finding out So who was like the most famous ballot ball player like 5 years ago? Let's say 5 years ago. Who was the one winning all the championships? Everybody was talking about him. Was like on the bandwagon. Who was it? 5 years ago. Won like 3 championships in a row. 5 years ago. See, this is my point. You guys don't even remember him. It was Steph Curry. He was... Oh, okay. I heard it, right? I mean, like, he was at the top, right? He was in all the commercials, right? The baby-faced assassin, right? He was sniping. He was doing commercials. All right. Then what happened to him? He got injured. And what happened to the crowds? They left him. He gone. Now who's the big? Then instantly, who's in top now? Now it's all about Luka. It's all about the Lakers, right? Steph Curry and the Warriors is like, nobody even wears their stuff, and it's like gone. They gone. And they were the biggest thing, right? That's how it works with crowds. They will be on, and then a couple years later, they will drop you like a bad habit. They will drop you like a bad habit, and then they'll ride somebody else for a while, and then he'll be on top, and then when they get done with him, they will drop him like a bad habit. Crowds, people, human beings are fickle, guys. Who's the most popular singer in the world right now, or one of the most popular? I'm hearing a lot of names, but nothing that your pastor told me. All right, I don't know who it is, but here's what I can promise you. Probably nobody cared about him 10 years ago. True or false? Whichever one you said 10 years ago, probably nobody cared about him. It was probably somebody else. And I guarantee you, 10 years from now, the ones that you guys just said, they'll be done with those ones too. They'll be done. You'll be done with them. You'll take your CDs and you'll give them to Goodwill, right? That's what's happening. Who's on top now? Your pastor told me there's a girl called Billie Eilish that's like riding she's riding the waves right now, right? 5 years ago, she wasn't there. She's riding the wave right now, but 5 years from now, they will drop her and they'll be on to the next one. Maybe 10. Sometimes it takes 10 years. But so that's what you guys got to know from this second city. The recap is Lystra, fickle. People are fickle. So, all right, back to Paul. What do you guys think? Do you think he was really dead or just pretending to be dead? Any opinions? Mystery, okay. So you're not even going to take a guess. All right. Well, either way, whatever actually happened to him, guys, there's no way he should have been able to walk after what happened to him. And he definitely, if it was me, even if I could walk, I wouldn't be walking back into that city. I'd be going someplace else. But Paul was kind of passionate and kind of stubborn. He went back in that city. But fortunately, the next day, he kind of came to his senses. Maybe he remembered what the Lord had said. Hey, if they persecute you, you don't have to try to be a hero. Just leave. And Paul and Barnabas left that city, thankfully, and went on to city number 3. And that is the city, do you guys know the name? It's right there on the map. City number 3, final stop. The end of the red line starts with a D. Derbe. This is the last city. Now, I'm only going to say like 2 verses on Derbe because by now Paul does the same thing in every city. So if you're wondering why, if you're reading my account in the future and you're wondering why I say like nothing about what he did in this last city, I tell you exactly what he did. I'm just giving you the summary because he has the same pattern in all his cities. This is what he did in Derbe. Are you ready for it? He went to Derbe. What do you think the first step he did was? Evangelism. Yep. The next day, he preached the gospel in that city. Then guess what he did for those that believed? Yep, I'm going to make that my verse 21. They preached the gospel in that city and discipled a lot of people. Now, discipling them took months. It took maybe up to a year. I'm not exactly sure. But then they discipled them, and now it was finally time to go home. Okay, there was a strong group of believers in this city of Derbe. So, time to go home. Mission trip's over. They got 2 choices. They can either go straight home from Derbe to Antioch. It's just like right over there to the right. Swoop down. Or they can go back and just visit all the Christians that they just saved and discipled in these 6 cities one more time. And which one do you think they did? Yeah, they decided, all right, we're on our way home. We're not going to stay long, but let's just walk back through these cities and give some encouragement to the Christians. Because some of the Christians, like the ones in that tiny Antioch, that Pisidian Antioch, it had been a year since Paul was there, and he had gotten violently kicked out. Some of them might even be wondering if he was still alive. Like, this guy came to our city, we got saved, then he got, like, kicked out. We don't know what happened to him. We don't know if, like, we should still be following this Christianity thing or not, because he's gone. You know what I mean? There's no, like, cell phones and internet where you can, like, look up Christianity, you know. Paul was gone. So he's like, let's just go back and let him know, hey, I'm still alive. Keep going. Stay strong. So that's what they did. They go back to the cities, and Paul also wanted to do one more important step. He had done step 1 with them, which was what? What was step 1? Evangelism, yep. He had done step 2. What was step 2? Yep. But there was one thing he had not done in any of these cities. Yep. He hadn't set up churches and gotten elders in place. So that was time for task 3. So I'll make this the second half of verse 21. I'm literally putting everything in like 2 or 3 verses here. But it's so simple. Evangelism, discipleship, churchification. All right, I'll make this let's just keep it at verse 21. Paul and Barnabas then returned to Lystra, Iconium, and Antioch. And here's what they did. They strengthened the disciples. They encouraged them to stay true to the faith. They told them things like this. They told them things like, we have to go through a lot of hardships to get into God's kingdom. Okay? Paul probably went up to them and probably was like, guys, you see these scars? You see this one right here? You see this bruise right here? You see this scar right here? This is what it means to be a Christian. This stuff happens to you. Bruises are a part of it, all right? It's not strange. It's just a part of the game. And probably told these new believers, get ready for it. And actually, that's what he did tell them. You're going to have to go through hardships too. We must go through many hardships, he says, to enter the kingdom of God. So you see these scars? In other words, he was telling them, expect it. You might get some of those along your journey too. This is normal. Suffering is normal for Christians in this age. The good news, guys, is although there's a lot of bruises in the path of following Jesus, anytime you're going through suffering, no matter how hard it is, God always pours comfort in your life to match however much the suffering is. And I can tell you that I've seen it in my own life. When you go through suffering, when you have a severe heartache in your life because you're Christian, whether it's friends, family, somebody's harassing you, God will always pour special comfort into your life for that season, and it'll be okay. It'll be okay. And in fact, you'll actually probably have more joy than you ever have in some of those instances. But you'll definitely have comfort. So you don't have to be afraid. Okay, suffering is a part of being Christian. You're going to suffer. Okay? But there'll always be comfort. Bruises always come with blessings. So don't be afraid of them, all right? But it is still true, and he gave them the whole truth. If you want to share in Jesus' glory, you got to share in his crown, or in his suffering, sorry. If you want to share in his glory, you got to share in his suffering. If you want to wear the crown someday, you got to wear a cross. Okay? No cross, no crown. That's real Christianity, guys. Watch out for preachers and teachers, whether it's online, whether it's in the spotlight. Watch out for teachers and preachers that sell you a cheap version of Christianity that just says it's full of bling and blessing and swag and no suffering. Guys, they're trying to, that's clickbait. That's Christian clickbait. It ain't true. All right? All right, now for step 3. I told you he's going to do step 3, right? All right, this is it. Verse 23, I'm going to make it in my account. Paul and Barnabas, what do you think they did? Step 3 is what? Set up churches, yep. Paul and Barnabas appointed elders for them in every church. Okay, do you guys know what elders are, right? They're like the person that they lead the individual churches. Yep, so he got them arranged in church families and put elders in charge for each of the churches. And then he prayed, fasted, and guys, he was leaving. Some of them he might not ever come back to. He prayed, he fasted, and he commit them to the Lord. So I commit you to God and to his grace. Okay, and he left. He had evangelized, he had discipled them, he had set them up with churches with elders. Time to go on. So he hit to the coast cities and sailed back to his home church city of Antioch. And he's finally at home. The Christian missionary trip, the first ever Christian missionary trip, comes to an end. He gets home. And what do you guys think? You think they were happy to see him? He'd been gone. How long had he been gone for? Yeah, 2 years. That's a long mission trip. Some of them have forgotten. But can you imagine the party? They probably threw a huge party. And guys, everybody look up here. I want you to catch this. Imagine what happened at that party. Paul and Barnabas are sitting down. They're the guests, right? Everybody's gathering around. They're telling the stories, and their stories are all about how God did amazing things, opened up a door of faith to these Gentiles, and all these Gentiles got saved. It's amazing, right? They're sitting there. Everybody, look at me, right here. I want you to catch this. Don't miss this. This is the heart of this message. They're looking at Paul and Barnabas. It's been 2 years, so their face probably looks a little different, right? It's maybe a few more wrinkles. They're 2 years older now. Just slight, but they notice it. Everybody's looking at them. Their beard is a little bit longer, right? And then all of a sudden, guys, they see something on Paul's face, on his cheek. It's a scar. And they're like, oh, I wonder how he got that scar. And then they look over next to that, and there's like another scar. And then they're like, whoa, he's got like 2 scars on his face. And then they look at his neck, and they're like, whoa, his neck is covered with scars. And then they notice his hands and his forearms and his legs are covered in scars. And they're like, geez, Paul, what? He's sitting there happy, telling about what happened to you on this trip? And he turns to him and he says, bruises happened to me. But blessings, guys. There were so many blessings. God opened a door of faith, and so many of these Gentiles came to faith. It was amazing the things God did, and he had only praise for what God had done. Bruises, guys, in your life too. They'll happen, but they will always come accompanied by blessing. Sometimes you got to wait for them. Sometimes you got to wait through the night to see the dawn. But bruises, guys, always come with blessings. So, Christianity's first official mission trip has been completed. Paul's summary report, it went great and I only got killed once. Amazing things are happening, guys. God's saving people all over the world. It's an amazing time. But global Christianity at this point in the game is definitely changing. It used to be all Jewish people, right? Raise your hand if you understand what I mean with Jewish people. The whole Christian church had been Jewish people around the globe, right? And then like a few people got saved. Peter preached to like one family, one black guy, and some half-breeds, okay? So a few kind of half-Jews and a few non-Jews, but that was just like a drop in the pan. But by this one mission trip, this 2-year mission trip, do you know what's happened? There's now thousands of Gentile Christians in the global church in at least 6 different regions of the empire. So you know what's happening? The scales are tipping. And soon, it won't be long, that there's actually more Gentile Christians, Asians, Africans in the church, global church, in God's family than there are Jewish people. And you know what the Jewish people are starting to feel right now? They're starting to feel a little worried. They're like, what's all, like all these strange people are coming into our faith. Like, they still eat bacon and they wear strange clothes and they do strange things. Are they going to learn our laws? Are they going to learn all the laws God gave our people? Like, they're not supposed to eat certain foods and they can't wear certain clothes. Like, who's going to teach them? Like, we got to be careful. This thing is just spreading and we don't want them to like taint our religion. Does that make sense? They're nervous. And it's going to raise that huge question. The number one question it's going to raise is this. Raise your hand if you're a Gentile Christian. All right, then this should be important to you. This is the question the Jews are going to ask. Should these Gentile Christians, these Asian Christians, these African Christians, should they be told they have to obey the Old Testament laws? The food laws, the sacrifice laws, the festival laws, the clothing laws, 613 laws in the commands of Moses, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Do these Gentile Christians have to obey those? It's going to be a huge debate. And next week, the church is going to answer the question by calling its first ever Global Christian Council. And they're going to answer this question. And their decision, listen up, the decision they make next week is going to be authoritative for every Gentile Christian in the world in every future generation, including you. So be sure you don't miss next week. But for this week, this has been chapter 14 of our story, Acts.